Good evening, I'm Rohit Sharma and welcome to Desi From DC, coming to you every night from heart of Washington. This is where America's power corridors meet India's prime time to break down the political, economic and global stories that shape both the nations live from Washington DC. From Capitol Hill to Raisana Hill, we connect the dots between what happens here in Washington and how it echoes back home in India. We begin tonight with the big stories of the day. US considered attending G20 Summit, says South African president. Trump labels Democrats' military video as seditious. Trump and JD Vance snubbed at Cheney funeral. Ukraine rejects US peace proposal. And Karoline Leavitt celebrates loving marriage despite the age gap. Tonight we're cutting through a diplomatic dust-up that's turning into one of the biggest stories around the G20 Summit in South Africa. There's confusion, political messaging, and even a White House spokesperson calling some of the reporting as complete fake news. So what's really going on here? And why is the US so determined not to show up? Let's break it down. It all started when South African President Cyril Ramaphosa told reporters in South Africa that he had received notice from the United States, suggesting Washington might reconsider its boycott and attend the G20 in one shape or form. Now, that statement immediately ricocheted across South African media, and for a moment, it looked like the US was softening its position and reversing course. But within hours, the White House pushed back hard. Officials flatly denied any shift, calling reports totally false and fake news. They say the only American presence will be a charge d'affaires in Pretoria, attending the ceremonial handover of the G20 presidency. No delegation, no participation, no negotiations, and absolutely not a reversal. And this isn't just a scheduling issue, it's a standoff. So why is the US boycotting the G20 summit? And why has Washington decided to sit this one out? There are basically three big reasons, and each one of them is political, strategic, and deeply contentious. First, President Trump has repeatedly accused South Africa of abusing white Afrikaner farmers, even using the phrase white genocide, something South African officials call inflammatory and untrue. That claim is the foundation of the US boycott. Second, the Trump administration opposes key part of South Africa's G20 agenda, including large-scale debt relief, climate transition funding, and what South Africa calls just energy transition. These are priorities strongly supported by the Global South and viewed cautiously by Washington. And third, this boycott is also political theater. Skipping the summit allows President Trump to send a message that the US will not endorse a G20 platform he considers biased, and US will not lend its weight to a presidency that he sees as hostile. South Africa, meanwhile, insists the summit will go on with or without America. So why does this all matter, and what's the significance of this boycott? And this is where the story really becomes global, because the consequences go far beyond a diplomatic snub. The US is the world's largest economy. When it skips a G20 summit like this, it weakens the forum's ability to deliver meaningful agreements on climate, debt, trade, and global development. For South Africa, this is their first ever G20 and first ever G20 to be hosted on African soil, a moment of leadership for the continent. But Washington's absence creates an empty chair moment the world cannot ignore. President Ramaphosa says the US is giving up its role by not participating, and the White House says it's standing up on the principle. What about the rest of the G20 then? Well, they are navigating a geopolitical split right in the middle of a summit designed for unity. So confusion, denial, politics, and a boycott that's now symbolic on both sides. South Africa says the show will go on, and the US says it's not coming back. And the world watches as one of the most important global forums meets under the shadow of an empty seat. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, however, will be traveling to G20, and he's going to be attending with all the pomp. Here's a report.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is set to attend the G20 Leaders Summit in Johannesburg, South Africa from 21 to 23rd November, where he will present India's views on the core elements of the G20 agenda. According to the Ministry of External Affairs, the Prime Minister will participate in all three formal sessions of the summit, outlining India's positions on inclusive and sustainable growth, global resilience to climate and disaster risks, and the opportunities and challenges posed by emerging technologies, including artificial intelligence and critical minerals. The MEA underscored that this summit marks the fourth consecutive G20 gathering hosted in the Global South. The sequence began with Indonesia's presidency in 2022, followed by India's landmark summit in 2023, which saw the African Union formally admitted as a permanent member of the grouping. Brazil continued the momentum by hosting the summit in Rio in 2024, and now South Africa holds the presidency for 2025, extending the Global South's leadership streak. Together, G20 countries account for roughly 80% of global GDP, 75% of global trade, and 60% of the world's population, underscoring the weight of these successive presidencies among emerging economies. Alongside the summit, Prime Minister Modi will also hold a series of bilateral meetings with world leaders in Johannesburg. He will also attend the India-Brazil-South Africa Leaders Meeting hosted by South Africa. Established in 2003, the IBSA Dialogue Forum brings together three major democracies and emerging economies from Asia, South America, and Africa. The platform fosters cooperation in areas such as trade, development, defense, governance, and broader South-South collaboration. IBSA nations also coordinate positions on global issues, advocate reform of the United Nations, including the expansion of the Security Council, and jointly finance development projects in vulnerable countries through the UN-administered IBSA Fund. The three sessions scheduled for the Johannesburg Summit will revolve around inclusive and sustainable economic growth, the G20's role in building a resilient world, and shaping a fair and just global future. The theme for the G20 in 2025 is Solidarity, Equality and Sustainability, reflecting South Africa's priorities as host. This year's summit, however, takes place against the backdrop of mounting tensions between the United States and South Africa. The United States has boycotted the summit and, according to a Bloomberg report, has cautioned Pretoria against issuing a joint statement. Relations soured earlier in May when South African President Cyril Ramaphosa was publicly reprimanded by US President Donald Trump at the White House following false accusations that Ramaphosa was committing genocide against white Afrikaners and expropriating farmland.
For generations, Miami has been a haven for those fleeing communist tyranny in South Africa. I mean, if you take a look at what's going on in parts of South Africa, look at South Africa, what's going on. Look at South America, what's going on. You know, I'm not going to, we have a G20 meeting in South Africa. South Africa shouldn't even be in the Gs anymore because what's happened there is bad. I'm not going. I told them I'm not going. I'm not going to represent our country there. It shouldn't be there.
All I can say in my experience in politics is that boycotts never really work. They have a very contradictory effect. The United States, by not being at the G20, one must never think that we are not going to go on with the G20. The G20 will go. All other heads of state will be. In the end, we will take fundamental decisions, and their absence is their loss.
PM Modi's presence in Johannesburg signals India's continued leadership in shaping global conversations on growth, climate, emerging technologies, and global South solidarity. With the US absent and tensions simmering, the summit is set to be politically charged, but also a major opportunity for India to reinforce its voice on the world stage. With Farhan Khan, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
A diplomatic flare-up between Pakistan and United States has taken up an unusually blunt turn. Former CIA officer John Kiriakou has openly responded to a formal letter from Pakistan demanding an apology for his comments that India would outperform Pakistan in a conventional war. The letter sent by the president of former Prime Minister Imran Khan's political party called on Kiriakou to apologize to His Excellency, meaning Imran Khan, to the members of the party and to the people of Pakistan for expressing his opinion. But Kiriakou's reply was anything but diplomatic. He sent back an email to the Pakistani party leader and said, and we quote, that I wiped my ass with the letter and your demands for an apology. He later told the podcast host that he had followed his lawyer's initial advice to discard the letter, but chose instead to respond in his own unmistakable style, and has not received a reply from Pakistan ever since.
Because it has 5 times the people. Yeah. The death threats. I've lost count of how many death threats I received. And then, the best of all, like my lawyer's like, got to keep a low profile, just be aware of your surroundings. I know, right?
John's like, yeah. Fuck you.
So I get a letter from the president of Imran Khan's political party, right?
Man.
Whatever it's called, the Pakistan whatever party.
You got a letter.
A letter in the mail.
Interview.
And he says that they condemn in the strongest possible terms what I said to the Indians, and they demand an immediate apology to His Excellency, the former Prime Minister, to the members of the party, and to the people of Pakistan.
For giving an opinion?
Yeah. So my lawyer's like, just throw it away. Just throw it away. So I didn't throw it away. I sent him an email, and I said,
oh my God.
in regards to your demand for an apology, I wipe my ass with your demands for an apology. And I hit send. And that's how I left it. And I haven't heard back from them.
Thursday morning in Washington, tension surged as President Donald Trump attacked 6 Democratic lawmakers, veterans, and former intelligence officials over a video telling U.S. service members they could refuse illegal orders. Trump labeled them as traitors and suggested their actions were punishable by death, prompting swift condemnation from, obviously, Democrats who called the post dangerous and threatening. Republicans criticized the video itself, while the White House said Trump wasn't advocating violence but warned of the risk of encouraging troops to defy the chain of command. The debate centers on constitutional duty, military obedience, and the limits of political speech. Thursday morning in Washington brought about an abrupt escalation. President Donald Trump fired off a series of social media posts targeting 6 Democratic lawmakers, veterans and former intelligence officials who recently released a video urging U.S. service members to refuse illegal orders.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law or our Constitution.
We know this is hard and that it's a difficult time to be a public servant.
But whether you're serving in the CIA,
The Army,
Our Navy,
the Air Force,
your vigilance is critical
and know that we have your back.
because now, more than ever,
The American people need you. We need you to stand up for our laws.
our Constitution,
and who we are as Americans. Don't give up.
don't give up.
Don't give up.
Don't give up the ship.
In his post, Trump labeled the lawmakers as traitors, seditious behavior, punishable by death, he asked. Lock them up, and reposted comments calling for them to be hanged. The video in question featured Senators Elissa Slotkin and Mark Kelly, Representatives Jason Crow, Chrissy Holhan, Maggie Goodlander, and Chris Delizio, speaking directly to military and intelligence personnel. In it, they said, "You can refuse illegal orders. No one has to carry out orders that violate the law or our Constitution." Reaction on Capitol Hill was immediate. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer called the president's remarks a call for the execution of elected officials and urged every member, regardless of party, to condemn them. In the House, Democratic leadership described the post as disgusting and dangerous death threats against members of Congress. On the Republican side, House Speaker Mike Johnson did not defend Trump's execution rhetoric, but called Democrats' video wildly inappropriate and very dangerous for telling troops to disobey orders. At the White House briefing, Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt was pressed on whether the president was urging execution of lawmakers. Her answer, no. But she added that the Democrats' video perhaps is punishable by law. and that encouraging service members to defy the chain of command is a very dangerous thing, and they should be held accountable.
This morning, President Trump accused 6 Democratic lawmakers of seditious behavior punishable by death. Just to be clear, does the president want to execute members of Congress?
No. Let's be clear about what the president is responding to, because many in this room want to talk about the president's response, but not what brought the president to responding in this way. You have sitting members of the United States Congress who conspired together to orchestrate a video message to members of the United States military, to active duty service members, to members of the national security apparatus, encouraging them to defy the president's lawful orders. The sanctity of our military rests on the chain of command. And if that chain of command is broken, it can lead to people getting killed. It can lead to chaos. And that's what these members of Congress who swore an oath to abide by the Constitution are essentially encouraging. We have 1.3 active duty service members in this country. And if they hear this radical message from sitting members of Congress, that could inspire chaos, and it could incite violence, and it certainly could disrupt the chain of command. These 3 members of Congress, I will also add, knew exactly what they were doing. You look at Alyssa Slotkin. She's a former member of the CIA. Mark Kelly was a captain in the U.S. Navy. Maggie Goodlander was a naval officer, and notably, she is also the wife of Joe Biden's national security former advisor, Jake Sullivan. And so these members knew what they were doing. They were leading into their credentials as former members of our military, as veterans, as former members of the national security apparatus to signal to people serving under this commander-in-chief, Donald Trump, that you can defy him and you can betray your oath of office. That is a very, very dangerous message, and it perhaps is punishable by law. I'm not a lawyer. I'll leave that to the Department of Justice and the Department of War to decide.
The stakes extend beyond partisan back and forth. At the center are competing interpretations of constitutional duty, what qualifies as an unlawful order in the military, how far political speech can go, and whether elected officials should be addressing service members directly about such questions. Supporters of Democrats argue that it's a reminder of the military's obligation to the Constitution. Critics say it risks undermining the chain of command and fueling mistrust. As one lawmaker put it, if we don't draw a line here, there is no line left to draw. Washington National Cathedral became the site of a bipartisan tribute. Today, as political figures from across the spectrum gathered to honor former Vice President Dick Cheney. Our top story tonight, a remarkable moment of respect and remembrance for a man whose influence spanned decades despite his polarizing reputation. 2 former presidents were present, Republican George W. Bush, who served with Cheney, and Democratic leader Joe Biden, who once called him the most dangerous vice president in American history. Both praised Cheney's steadfastness and commitment to his principles, highlighting the rare respect he commanded even among political opponents. Notably absent from the service were President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance, who were not invited, underscoring lingering tensions that the leaders share with the Cheney family. Inside the cathedral, conversation among past and present leaders illustrated Cheney's unique position in American politics, a man respected for his intellect, loyalty, unwavering convictions, even by those who disagreed with him. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt is opening up about her marriage, the 32-year age gap that once raised eyebrows in her own family. Tonight, she's setting the record straight with warmth, confidence, and a very personal look at the man she calls her greatest supporter. Leavitt addressed what she called the unusual age difference between her and her husband, real estate developer Nicholas Riccio. The two met in 2022 through a mutual friend while she was running for Congress in New Hampshire. What began as a friendship, she says, grew into something deeper, ultimately leading to their marriage in January 2025, just days before President Trump's inauguration. Leavitt says that this relationship did not come without tough conversations, especially at home. Her parents were hesitant, and at first not, at least because her mother is younger than Riccio. Leavitt admits the initial discussion was challenging, but once her parents met him, she says everything changed. They saw a man who adores their daughter, a self-made businessman with quiet confidence and deep respect for the family she comes from. She describes her husband as introverted and private. Far from the spotlights she navigates daily. He's not on social media, he avoids the political stage, and he focuses on his successful real estate business back home. But she says that stability allows him to fully support her demanding career in the Trump administration. Together, they are raising a young child and building what she calls a beautiful family life. The UN Climate Summit COP30 in Belém was evacuated today after a fire broke out. Flames and smoke were reported by journalists, including BBC climate editor Justin Rovalt. The blaze was extinguished in 6 minutes, 13 people treated for smoke inhalation, and no serious injuries were reported. And that wraps up tonight's edition of Desi from DC. This is Rohit Sharma for India Today Global. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button before you leave. And as always, stay tuned, stay informed, and stay curious.